Okay, I done a video here on this gal that beat her husband to death with a hammer. Okay, I done that, I don't know, a week, 2 weeks ago. Anyhow, I done a reply on that. But anyhow, this is more on that same case. I want you to pay really close attention to what's going on here. The daughter of the mother who beat the husband to death with a hammer. So the daughter of the mother and father there, her father's now dead, okay, has done an interview, okay? And I want you to pay close attention to what's going on, okay? So I'm going to play this and I'll point it out as we go.
A wife of 30 years tells 911 she beats her husband to death with a hammer after years of abuse. Was this self-defense or just cold-blooded murder? We've got Rukiah Drosty, who is the daughter of Donna Ray Williams. She's with us now here on the show. Give us a sense, Rukiah, was your mother a victim of abuse?
I do not believe that my mother was a victim of abuse. No, not in the way that not in the way that people are saying or hinting towards, or not in the way that she claims she was. Absolutely not.
Okay, now, just like in society, you got to remember this. This is the way it's been for a long, long time now, okay? It's always the man's fault. Always. Even when it's not the man's fault. Okay, it's always the man's fault. So as you can see here, the guy who was bludgeoned to death with a hammer, okay, by his wife, we are now trying to dress it out that it's his fault somehow, okay? And the daughter clearly is stating her feelings because the daughter, well, it's her mom and dad. She grew up in that house, right? So listen up.
And how do you know that?
I know that was very short, wasn't it? So how do you know that, the reporter says to her? Well, isn't it obvious? It's the daughter's mother and dad. Isn't it obvious that she grew up with her mom and dad? She was raised with her mom and dad in the same home? Isn't that obvious? Okay, but she has to question her integrity. Why? Because we've got to make sure that the man's the villain. Even if the man's innocent and dead because he's innocent and was bludgeoned to death by the one that was weaker, because we all know that women are weaker than men. So since we all know that women are weaker than men, and he's the one dead and she's not, at her hands with a hammer, okay, we still got to make sure that he's the villain, don't we? So watch out.
I lived in the house. There was a very long history of abuse in the home. There was always a lot of alcohol in the home. But honestly, a lot of the alcohol consumption and overuse and abuse of the alcohol was mainly done by my mom. Her disease in the last few years had progressed to the point where my family and myself had very often spoke of interventions, and my father had even urged her to go to the detox program, which she did enter for 3 days. But then, we kept saying, well, why aren't you going into a 30-day program? She lied and said, oh, well, they didn't say I needed to. I'm going to do like an outpatient program, which she never completed. I truly believe that my mother was mentally disturbed. There's no doubt in my mind that she did not have some underlying mental issues that had gone undiagnosed. We had all tried to help my mother so many times. And I'll also tell people that, again, people don't understand. They don't know. They weren't there.
You hear? See, this is sad that the daughter has to go to the point of saying, people don't understand. They don't know. They wasn't there. See, the daughter is telling the truth from what she grew up, what she witnessed with her own eyes in the home that she grew up in. And she's telling you what she saw with her own eyes, okay? But she has to go out of her way to say that people don't know. They don't understand. They wasn't there. See, for her to make that statement, well, it's simple. The reason she's making that statement is because everybody that wasn't there, that hasn't the first freaking clue that went on, is doing what they always do. That's right. Manipulating, twisting, lying, and trying to flip the truth to paint the victim into the villain. Why is that? Well, because the victim has a dick between their legs. They're just a guy. That's the reason. So everybody automatically wants to run and say, he is the villain. He is the villain, even if he wasn't there. So she's forced to have to say them words that you people don't understand. You wasn't there.
But the 2 weeks during the time that my mother was, that my father was in the house, I talked to my mother about 4 or 5 times. And indeed, I actually talked to her on Wednesday the 23rd. That was the last conversation we had. I had actually called to talk to my dad, and I, needed to ask him a question about my car. And my mother proceeded to tell me that, they had been out in the yard that day. Everything was totally fine. We were out in the yard. You know how Dad likes to be in the yard. But he ran to the store, and when he gets back, I'll have him call you. And she did not sound those 2 weeks like anything was wrong at all, other than the fact that she sounded inebriated every single time. But that was extremely normal and pretty much the way my mom was, and everybody knew that. That was close to the family.
Is it possible there was a whole other side maybe you did not see, or do you believe you saw pretty much what was going on? You feel you have a clear picture?
Okay, now I want you to understand clearly what the reporter just said there, what she just said. Okay? Is it possible that there's something you didn't see? Is it possible that you lived in the home and you was completely stupid and blind and dumb, and that he was the villain? See, the reporter's trying to coerce her, okay? Trying to suggest that it was the other way around. That's right. That's what you're seeing going on. With everything the daughter has just said, and she just got through making it plain and clear that you people don't understand. You wasn't there. Which she's correct. She shouldn't have to say that. It's common sense. This is her mom and dad. She grew up with their mom and dad. She was in the house. But you still got to go out of your way to try to manipulate the story. And that's exactly what you saw the media try to do. Flip the story and cover up, cover up, manipulate. Why? Because it's a female. That's right. At all costs, you've got to cover up for the females so that it can be legal for females to kill males. Because males are villains. Males are monsters. That's right.
I feel that there may have been some things that no, obviously I wasn't in their relationship, but I'll tell you what, I'm a 33-year-old woman. I have 4 children. I'm married. Before I got married to my husband, I was in an abusive relationship, and I was scared to death of that relationship, scared to death every single day. And everybody that knew me knew it. There were markers, there were signs. I can't sit here and lie and tell you that I saw signs that my mother was in immediate trouble and needed to get out of that relationship. What I did see was that my parents had a very toxic relationship, that they, went at each other, that my mom a lot of the time was the aggressor. She very often would be the first one to yell and curse at my dad. My dad was a very laid-back guy, and that's just the truth. He didn't raise his voice unless somebody really pushed him to that point. I was witness to arguments where, from the next room where I could hear my mom just yelling and cursing, and my dad very low, in a very low tone saying, "Donna, stop. Donna, knock it off. Donna, that's not true, Donna." I mean, my take on things is that this is a woman who drank a lot, who I've never known her not to drink. And if you're drinking that much, we've all been around people that have, that are drunk and that, start looking at things through that lens. And all of a sudden, you're looking at them funny and you're saying something funny and you did this wrong and why, how dare you? That is that is exactly the way the arguments went between my parents. My dad was always much more level-headed and rational than my mom.
You know, Rakaya, it must be heartbreaking for you. I can't even imagine how you feel when you heard the news of what happened, what your mother did to your father.
It is absolutely heartbreaking, and I'm devastated. I will never, ever be the same. But as soon as I heard people saying things like, oh, maybe it's true, you know, maybe she really just was a poor, abused woman who was battered for 30 years, I took classes. I've been to counseling. I know what battered woman syndrome is. She did not suffer from that. My mother suffered from mental illness and an addiction problem. And it's as simple as that.
And that's where they cut the report short. You know why they cut the report short right there, don't you? That was the end of the actual news report. Well, that was the end of the news report for a very good reason. Because the media didn't get what they were after. They tried. They tried to coerce her into saying that my dad was the monster. He was a villain. Okay? They're upset because they wanted to paint her out as an abused victim. 30 years of being abused because it was a guy. 30 years of a guy beating on the poor victim. That's what they wanted. And they tried. But when they couldn't get the daughter, who was being 100% honest, who grew up in the home, when they couldn't manipulate her into lying on her dad and painting her dad out as a villain and a monster to cover up the real villain, the female, you heard her. The mother instigated 90% of the fights. And that is the truth. This came from the daughter. It's the truth. She grew up, she knows. She grew up in the house. She knows. Not you idiots that wasn't in the home. Not you idiots that was not only not in the home, that don't even know the family. But you idiots that wasn't there, that don't even know the family, all want to fucking assume. See, that's the problem with this fucked up society of ours. You people always want to paint the guy into the villain. The guy's the villain. The guy's the monster. The guy's the villain. The guy's the monster. The guy's the villain. The guy's the monster. It's always the guy. It's always the guy. It's always the guy. And then when the female does something wrong, nope, still the guy. Because you females don't want to be accountable for any of your own actions. And as you can see, the media tried to manipulate the story. They tried to flip the script to what it wasn't. And the daughter stuck to her guns and told the truth. And she's correct. Even in real life, it is 90% of the time the female who starts the fucking drama. That's no lie. Now, I'm not saying men don't, because men do. But what's covered up is the real reason that a lot of drama happens. Because you people always forget one thing. Always. That it takes two people to fight. That's right. 90% of every story that you ever hear on this type of stuff is always one side of the story. One side of the story. And 99% of the time, that side of the story is the female side, not the male's. How many times do you get to hear the male side of the story? 1% of the time. No lie. And this was the case where the media wanted to flip the script, okay, and call her the abused woman in a 30-year relationship that was beaten, abused, and battered by the villain, monster man. And they wasn't happy because the daughter stuck to her guns and the actual monster was the female. That's why they cut the report short the way they did. Because you just saw the end of the report, and that's the way they ended it. But I just wanted to point that out. And why did I want to point that out? Because this is what our society does. It tries to take truth and twist and turn it. That's right. Sexist. Totally sexist against men.